Hi everyone, welcome back to Mr. Opera, aka New School Singer, whatever we want to say here. Turn down my music a little bit. Maybe we'll keep Caruso a little stronger in the mix for a minute. So we got something cool today. We've got live chat popping up, and let me see if I can pop this out better for myself. I'll move this guy over a little, so I hope you guys can read that. Yeah. So there was a question before we started about the introduction of audio recordings and reproduction, and if it caused any changes to opera singing technique or mentality. And I read a really great book about it in school, incidentally, and I can't remember what the name of the book was. But the thesis of the book was that, yeah, there was this effect where the invention of the phonograph made a kind of feedback loop back to live performance. So originally we had a live performance, no phonograph. And then people come along and they want to record what's being done in the live performances. They want to reproduce that. Now you have something that's portable and reproducible. So you can carry it around. It was harder with the earliest wax recordings and stuff, and maybe there was nowhere else you could play it. But eventually it was a phonograph where anyone with a phonograph could play the same records. So it meant that you could carry it around, and then also you could hear the same thing exactly more than once. So you would hear it over and over again. And the phonograph also didn't have some things that were present in live performance. The main example in the book wasn't singing. It was actually strings. It was in particular violin, and I think like concert violin, but I'm not sure. It could be also in the orchestra. I'm not that educated on what string players do or don't do. I should maybe pay attention harder. But anyway, what it talked about was vibrato, and that before the invention of the phonograph, there was a lot less vibrato in string playing. It was considered an ornament, like doing a trill or something on that level. And instead, the expectation was that you would play everything more or less without vibrato, straight, so that when you add it, something happened. But then the phonograph was invented, and this kind of playing, the book's theory was that this kind of playing, without being able to see the player's face and body and everything and be live in the hall, and then combined with, you're going to hear it over and over again. And everyone's going to be hearing the same thing over and over again. You put those two things together, and it gets flat. The whole thing gets kind of dead. There's not enough going on to keep you interested in just the sound of somebody playing the violin. Before that, it was not just the sound. It was this, and the sound itself was influenced by what the audience was seeing. And and then the book talked about different ways in which what we see can experience what we hear, like, really profoundly. And there's a bunch of different, like the McGurk effect and different kinds of effects that you can read about that show that our hearing is not what we think it is. We don't necessarily hear what's there. It can be influenced actually by what we see. And so in any case, what happened next was that people developed a way of playing for the phonograph to make it interesting enough that in the context of your living room where you can't see the string player, it's actually interesting. It's not just dead and lifeless. So that made the recordings more interesting. But then what happened is people went to the concert hall, and now what they wanted to hear was the kind of playing that they heard on the recordings. So you have this effect where the idea was to capture what people are doing on the stage. You do that, and then now people on the stage change what they do so that it's better on the recording, and now people come to the concert hall and want the people on the stage to do the adapted playing for recordings. And probably the same thing happened with singing. I mean, it's like completely reasonable to assume but that's also what happened with singing. Oh, and by the way, yeah, so, and thanks, let me see, it was Joey Pie, thanks for the question. So, we could go through, like, what we think the precise changes are, I guess, to opera singing from the phonograph. I think it would be helpful to have some research done before talking about that. The way that they can establish that string playing was different after the invention of the phonograph is because the earliest recordings show us what people used to do. So we know that people what used to do is not what they do now, and we know that it changed after the phonograph, and then we know that people play in the concert hall more like what the changes were after the phonograph was invented. For the mentality in singing, I think that changed a lot. And also, like, the way, for instance, okay, I'm going to read Garcia now. And as we read this, unless we try really hard, we have this sense that, like, everyone's world at the time of Garcia, when this is going on, the stuff that's being said, works like our world. So, like, our biases and expectations and our values, all of these things come from today. So it's unless you actually discipline yourself not to think of it that way. I mean, for instance, we have the internet now. And when you think about another person and their beliefs and their information and everything, you assume they have Google and they can Google things. And unless we're careful, that's actually how we think of people living at the time of Garcia. But they didn't have that. And then we can also look at how, like, what else would then be different about our world? Well, with all of this, recording influencing what people do on stage and portability, and then portability of recordings turns into this broadcasting of recordings, then I would expect, like, the way people sing to be more similar across really, really huge chunks of geography compared to before. So I would expect that before all this interconnected communication, and before, now if someone wants to sing to 1,000 people, they can do it in their living room. Whereas 200 years ago, it was a whole different thing to sing to 1,000 people. And if you wanted to sing for 30,000 people back then, there was a minimum number of performers that you would need. So let's say if you want to sing to 30,000 people, you're gonna need at least 10 performers doing 10 concerts, and you're gonna need, and those are gonna be big concerts that can have, in huge halls that can have 3,000 people, and it can't all be at the same time, right? So you're gonna need all this infrastructure to sing for 30,000 people. Today, you can sing for 30,000 people in your basement. You just make a video and you put it on the internet, and it can go viral, and you have millions of people. So I would imagine what happens is that the way people sing gets more similar when you have that going on. And so that's another thing. When we read Garcia, we have to remember he's talking about his world, which is, like, as far as I know, Paris. And Paris is where this whole thing is going on, with the Italian style coming in, or this declamatory style coming in and starting to push aside the French style. So that's what he was complaining about at the beginning, for instance, was that if it weren't for Handel, everyone would just be barking things in these stupid Gluck operas, which he doesn't name Gluck, but it really sounds like he has a bone to pick with Gluck, because he doesn't like all this declamatory singing. And if you look at that style, you look at, like, Orfeo or something like that, it doesn't have any of this noodly business going on in the singing. It's just like you just sing your lines, and they're really simple, and it's like one syllable per note mostly, so yeah, he didn't like that, or he said it's a shame that nobody knows how to sing fast anymore, basically. Yeah, so that's that. But it's a good thing to do more research into how recordings have changed things. Anyway, let's get on to Hints on Singing by Manuel Garcia. Translated from the French by Beata Garcia. New and revised edition. And this is the third installment of reading Garcia. And let's see, where were we? I was trying to stir up some drama yesterday to get some more views. Bringing up the business with This Is Opera. So we'll see if that worked out. If you go over to the This Is Opera archive, you can find all of the old This Is Opera videos, and it's really informative, and it's a good way to preserve the record of what happened. But I started getting my videos uploaded over there, and so yeah, we're trying to revive some of that passion that we had going on, especially at the beginning of COVID and all that. Yeah, all stuck in our basements, but all maybe a little bit fired up, and that was maybe some of it was maybe a good thing. Anyway, so it's fine. And I meant to look up this what is the ventricles of Morgagni, but I didn't. I did try, but I didn't find anything easily. So here's the end of episode 2. We were talking about what age to start singing. 16 for girls, 18 for boys. And yeah, I guess that tracks pretty much with puberty. So that's that. 6. Description. Excuse me, I get some water here. Alright, I'm gonna adjust my seating so that I can breathe a bit better as I read this. There we go. 6. Description of female voices. Should I feminize my voice? I don't think so. That would be not appropriate. Okay. Are all female voices alike in extent and character? No. They are divided into 3 classes on account of the differences they show. They are the contralto, which is the lowest voice, the mezzo-soprano, which holds a middle position, and the soprano, which is the highest voice. What is the range of these voices? Generally, from an octave and a half to 2 octaves. How do you describe the registers in female voices? I'm going to turn this down a little bit. The chest voice, which is the lowest, is generally strong and energetic, especially in contraltos. In its full extent, it ranges from... Oh, and here he's got... There we go. Is that extent available in practice? Certainly not. The lowest notes are in most voices too weak to be of service. And I hate this. Why is he doing this? So, and those above E and F, and I guess that's in their range there. And later on they put like the alto clef or whatever, and I'm just like, what? I can't. No. Anyway. And those above E and F must never be used, lest the result be the ruin of the whole instrument. Let me check if anyone's in the chat here. No, we're good. Okay. Where does the chest register begin in mezzo-sopranos and in sopranos? Answer. Jeez, why is it like this? Okay. I might just skip this part because this is kind of silly. We're going to go into his specific Yeah, I'm just going to skip this part because it's this very specific pitch ranges for chest register, etc., etc. And we need to play the pitches for this. And I also don't have much I can comment. Okay, so let's move on to the meat of this here. Question. How do you compare the three registers? Answer. The medium notes are weaker and more veiled than the corresponding chest notes. 2. They cause a comparatively much greater loss of breath, which is the reason of their veiled quality, requiring a less vigorous contraction of the glottic lips than the chest notes. A relative relaxation of the vocal cord is felt when the voice passes from chest to the medium on the same note. 3. The point of sensation for the same sound emitted alternately by the two registers is not identical, for there is felt a sudden displacement of this point, accompanied by a shock of the larynx, and this sensation is the more marked the higher the note is. 4. Though theoretically these two registers may have a ninth in common from B to D flat, practice only admits a third, and C to E, but I don't know what are these specific pitches in the scientific notation. I guess, yeah. Oh, I guess we do. So it's that middle C and the E. So let's try to figure out what he's saying here. Okay, so it looks like for him the chest register just exists independently of anything. And it's just from F to C. That's going to be chest register. Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, and here we go. And there we have this. The term falsetto is no longer in use as a name for the medium register in the female voice. It was so employed, this is interesting, by the author and his contemporaries because its mechanism corresponds to that of the falsetto sounds which the male voice is capable of producing. I can't, there's this one word that I can't read right over here. But this is really interesting because here Garcia is saying that once you're getting above middle C, the female voice is essentially it's in falsetto. And oops. So he's saying that falsetto equals medium, and then below that you have chest, and then the high register is going to be above that. And that's the same mechanism that essentially a countertenor is using. Or anyone who is singing in what we would still call now falsetto. And as far as I know, that's actually turning out to be true. Like in the studies done by Complete Vocal Institute, and including on really loud sopranos. But as far as I know, I think also going to be the highest voice. Let's see. Oh no. Okay. So he's got a chest register starting in a different place. Okay. So this is for contraltos. This is only for contraltos. but also he's saying you're never supposed to, you should never sing E or F, the two lowest notes. This is weird. Okay. So for some reason the two lowest notes will will wreck your voice if you use them. The two lowest notes of what? So the two lowest notes, I think he's talking about pulling chest. Yeah. Okay. So he's saying the lowest chest notes are too weak to be used, and if you ever pull chest, you're gonna wreck you're gonna wreck yourself. You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. So Garcia is saying that he's got this reputation for being Captain Glottal, you know, for being all about pushing the chest higher and higher. But here he's saying that the female voices in any case should switch early into what he called before this revision, what he called falsetto, and he wants to call medium here, which is going to be, so he wants changing to the medium sort of falsetto register to happen early. And today that goes with like straw exercises and stuff. But then I guess we have to remember he's talking about the female voices here, and he's making a distinction. So he's got the mezzo-soprano starting just a little bit higher, but he actually transposes the chest register, and he's saying that the mezzo-soprano's lowest notes in that register are going to be weak. So in mezzo-soprano, the chest register begins on B-A, and then in the soprano on B flat. So he's actually, he does, so Garcia does have this idea that I disagree with it, but whatever, it's Garcia has it, of transposing registers, I guess. He doesn't qualify that it's an acoustic thing or what. But in some ways he's tying things to specific pitches, but then in other ways he's tying it to whether you're a soprano, mezzo-soprano, or a contralto. So there's a kind of mixture of kind of acoustic and essentialist kind of ideas here. So then back to the medium. The medium is equal in extent in all female voices and differs only in strength and quality. It is frequently weak and veiled. Its extent in practice is from C to D flat. So, and that's for, now this is for all female voices. So what that gives you essentially is that we have a chest register that transposes, but this medium register, which is falsetto, doesn't transpose. It's the same basically for everybody, if I'm getting this correctly. And this is for female voices only. So what of the head register? This register is the highest, and its sonority is the most remarkable, particularly in sopranos. So now we're talking about head voice. It invariably begins on one of the notes in this third, and he has C sharp to E. And for me, that's transposed up an octave, but actually it's tenor music is usually down an octave. Anyway. So, and he says contraltos do not often possess more than a third of its extent. Mezzo-sopranos rise as far as A, high A, and sopranos of whose voice it is distinctive rise to its limits, generally C. But he puts these as sort of access to the register, and I guess the register kind of exists independently. Yeah. And he calls this chest, medium, and head. But then a lot of references will probably be chest, falsetto, and head. As far as I know, the falsetto has panned out. And then as you go higher, it just keeps being falsetto. And then you can have like these different whistles. flageolet, I guess. Yeah. An interesting thing is we could look and see if what he's calling the head register has some acoustic significance, like maybe where essentially you can't make vowels because the formant range you would need for F2, for instance, is, or whatever formant, I think it's F2, but anyway, you need a certain range of frequencies, not just a difference between formants, in order to understand the vowel. And as long as you're within this range, things are possible. But then when you raise the pitch enough, there's no way now to get that resonance of the voice into the right territory anyway, into the right range in order to communicate something that people recognize as the vowel. Like there's nothing for your ear to distinguish anymore. So maybe, I don't know if this C sharp is high enough for that. Maybe he's talking about that, and then what he's calling the mechanism might have more to do with how singing is interacting with speech, how the acoustics is interacting with trying to communicate. So I don't know. But as far as I know, the mechanisms are the same. So it's like falsetto all the way. Okay. And he's saying that falsetto notes, when he says medium, I'm going to say falsetto because I think it's better. That's what he was saying. I think this edition has it changed to medium, but his original work says falsetto. So the falsetto notes are weaker and more veiled than the corresponding chest notes. So if you have the same note and you can sing it in chest or you can sing it in falsetto, he's saying your falsetto is going to not be as strong and you're going to lose a lot more air because it will be veiled. And as he reminded us before, the veiled sound makes the flame move when you sing a vowel into a lit candle. And here he's about to say that anyway. they cause a comparatively much greater loss of breath, right? So, and this is also interesting. He's saying that this register requires a less vigorous contraction of the glottic lips than the chest notes. A relative relaxation of the vocal cord is felt when the voice passes from chest to the medium on the same note. Now that would explain a lot. The frequent miscommunication between, for instance, tenors who don't experience this unless you count countertenors as tenors, in which case, okay. But let's say a spinto or lyric tenor, especially spinto, maybe the lyric tenor is experiencing some relaxation if the high notes are more, usually the high notes are pretty damn similar, but sometimes not. But not this contraction of the glottic lips, maybe just some relaxation that allows for slightly more stretch of the glottic lips. But this would explain all the relax and release talk, that seems to help sopranos. And also would explain some of the open throat talk. Because having less constriction in what I call area of interest number 3, where we make this necessary twang in order to get a metallic sound, for instance. If you relax that, you'll lose the metal in the sound, and also you will experience probably a drop in pressure unless you added some closure, some adduction, I guess, to the vocal folds. You'll probably experience some extra airflow from that as well, and that would perhaps explain what he's calling relaxation of the vocal cord. It might be relaxation actually of the epiglottis, whose role he's not really too aware of in phonation. And that would explain a lot, going from a metallic sound, which is probably what chest is, if it's to him more clear than a falsetto sound and more, more powerful and everything. That's fits the bill for a more metallic sound. So singing these quote unquote chest notes with metal. And that makes sense, and it's interesting that he's noticing these things. Yeah. So the point of sensation for the same sound emitted alternately by the two registers is not identical. For there is felt a sudden displacement of this point, accompanied by a shock of the larynx, and this sensation is the more marked the higher the note is. So what he's saying is that the longer you wait to do your transition, the more loss of stability a soprano, mezzo-soprano, or contralto will experience when they change. And then if you look at, so I mentioned the straw exercise before. The straw exercise uses nonlinear acoustics to encourage you to do that sooner. And it kind of stabilizes your folds for you as you do that. And so you can experience going through those motions. And that would explain a lot of why they do that. And it's cool that this is 1850. And he's saying this stuff before 1850, probably. So, really interesting. And then this I don't get. So, okay. The beginning of the head register within the limits of this interval should be understood to imply the blending notes or mixed tone, forming the bridge between. So now it gets more complicated. But this is not from him. This is not written by Garcia. So, i.e. mixed tone, for instance, is this guy. What was his name? Not Beata Garcia. Herman Klein. So we're reading more Herman Klein when I don't know what Herman Klein's interest was here, what he was trying to get up to. But maybe not exactly faithfully reproducing Garcia, because we did read a whole bunch about how he thinks, how he's claiming it's all Garcia's real words across my heart. So I don't know. I think it's good to be a little bit suspicious when we read these historical things. Be conscious of who's writing and who's editing, etc. So, the beginning of the head register, according to Herman Klein, within the limits of this interval should be understood to imply the blending notes or mixed tone. So, though theoretically these two registers may have a ninth in common, from B to D flat, practice only admits a third. Ha! So he's saying you could actually pull chest. You could take this a lot higher, or you could take but maybe no. It's they have a ninth in common, so a combination of pulling chest and taking your falsetto down low. You could switch anywhere. You could have both a whole ninth in common between the two registers. Between chest and medium. The comparison... Can you guys see these pretty well? I'm gonna check the chat here. There I am. So the comparison of the medium and... now we're reading again. Let's see. Okay. 5. The comparison of the medium and the head registers will give us the following results. The medium does not possess the same power of penetration as the head register. The difference shows itself at once from the point of junction. In robust organs, the two registers blend with ease. In weak or unhealthy organs, the union is often troublesome. The first 2 or 3 notes are inclined to break. This is one of the difficulties in the contralto voice. Here is a table showing how the registers are distributed. So, there's actually some really interesting things here that aside from the discussion of registers. I don't know if you noticed, but so far, like the discussion of the actual vocal pedagogy stuff is interesting, but more interesting is like what's kind of like around it. The stuff we can pull out about Garcia and his world. Especially if we try to think as much as possible from the perspective of his place and point in time. So, we're saying that weak or unhealthy organs are going to have trouble with register blending or with register transitions. And he's also saying that this medium range of... I'll circle it here. So this medium range for the female voices is danger zone and weak zone, I guess, because it doesn't conserve air like the next register coming up, and it doesn't have the power. So interesting there. But even more interesting is that he's equating being able to change registers, which I would call a skill, but he's saying it's an indicator of health. And that seems to be a theme that continued on and on and on. So that we don't necessarily talk about his registers like this today, but we have like chest and head. It's just chest, I think, probably is about where it was, and falsetto and medium have been just taken over by head. So people, and maybe there's this concept of mix, but people don't anymore think in terms of pitches, like set specific pitches mark the boundaries between registers. I think today there's a lot more of a sense that register is just how you sing something. And he's giving that option in some case where there's overlap between the registers. But then also he's giving this really strict definition about when things are what register. And he's also shifting that over according to voice type, as opposed to keeping those pitches fixed. And if you're keeping them fixed, it's because you think they have to do with something specific that's acoustic, because it would be then tied to perhaps to specific pitches. And he's more thinking that there's a physiological explanation for being a contralto, being a soprano, being a mezzo-soprano. It's something like being a particular species, or, you know, that you have this biological type, basically. And that it comes with these register changes. It's register migrations, if you will. Let's read on. Oh God, you're gonna make me read bass clef. And this now we have this tenor clef coming up. Oh, this is so annoying. Okay. How are the male voices classified? In men's voices, as in women's, the three registers coexist, but the chest predominates, the other two being but a remnant of the boy's voice. In consideration of the character, and especially the extent of men's voices, they may be classified as follows. The bass is... Oh, that was a really bad bass impression. Anyway, the bass is the lowest voice. The baritone is the middle voice. And the tenor is the highest voice. These voices, beginning with the bass at the bottom of the ladder... are each placed a third above the one preceding it. And they vary in extent from a 12th to a 15th. So, just go over it again. In men's voices, so the registers are going to work the same, except it's all chest. And if you sing anything but chest, you're using the remnant of the boy's voice. Okay. These voices, beginning with the bass at the bottom of the ladder, are each placed a third above the one preceding it, and they vary in extent from a 12th to a 15th. In the bass, This register is distinguished by breadth and power. It may descend to F, and even lower, it may rise to E. Sorry, freaking bass clef. I don't read that shit. Baritone. Sorry. The baritone has less volume but more ease and ring in the high notes. It extends from... you got like 3 pitches. So, yeah. So G, A, B flat, and then we go up, okay, the tenor, and then the tenor, fuck. Hang on, I gotta... So this is gonna be C. A. So from D... and that's going to be A. So that's actually B flat. We've got the baritone going up to F sharp and starting at G. So he's got the max note for... Oh, I should... And the... it's like, oh, we're on tenor stuff. And has a greater facility. The tenor goes from... from the D to the B flat. And has a greater facility than the other two in using falsetto and head registers. The falsetto in men's voices, when good enough to be used, has the same extent as in women's. Okay, so no C5s for, and that's B flat 4, by the way. So no C5s for this Garcia, who is famous for training the first tenor, Mr. Dupre, to sing a chest high C. But interesting here is that he's giving tenors, he's saying that what makes them a tenor is it's easier for them to sing in falsetto and head register. So I'm not sure that we've found that since people started singing classical music, since men started singing classical music in falsetto and head registers for a living, that it's necessarily tenors who have the easiest time with it. So I wonder, well, let's read on, because maybe his medium for tenors is not going to be the same as the medium for contraltos, mezzos, and sopranos. So here's a table of male voices. There's the table. Okay. And I'm not sure why. See, that is to say, it is capable of extending the singer's compass for several notes beyond the pure chest tone, wherever that may terminate. Note. And this Herman Klein again. But I don't understand the table. We have these solid notes, and we have... So we have quarter notes, and we have, I guess it's supposed to be half notes. They're just missing their tails, a couple of them. So that should have a tail. And then that should have yeah, great job, Mr. Opera. So that should have a tail, and then should have a tail. So I don't know the significance of the half notes and the quarter notes. Maybe it's like that's the half notes are your natural, and then quarter notes are extensions. I don't know. Yeah. And here is a table of the combined extent of the human voices. Okay. Okay, now, and here we have our medium. Medium is going from, in the normal treble clef, from A to C sharp. And then we're getting into head. Looks like it's starting at C5. So the high C for him is in this third register. And the middle C or no. No. Sorry. So he's got the chest extent, combined extent of the human voices. And we've got a C5 here. And it looks like it's still falling under chest. So I'm a little bit confused what he thinks the actual, you know, what are the actual. So we had it up to B flat before, but now he's giving his chest up to C. And then this head up here looks like it's actually, like, that's C6. That's C5. So, I don't know what he's saying exactly. Yeah. Cause here this half note here goes with this treble clef, and that doesn't have the octave thing, so, and he's using tenor clef anyway for that. So maybe this is just combined with the female voices. I don't know. And then he's got this crazy whistle stuff up here, whatever pitch that is. Let's see. C, G, B. So it's another C. It's like C7 or something, and it's I think C7. And it's very rare, and when not spontaneous, must never be attempted. So, sing it like no one's listening to you, and then. But if you're feeling like you rehearsed it, then don't do it. It's gotta be spontaneous. So only do it when, like, every time you see your girlfriends. After you haven't seen them for 2 days. Anyway. Why do you give several notes to indicate the limits of the... Oh, sorry. I should do my reading voice. Why do you give several notes to indicate the limits of the registers? Because the limits are not invariable and depend on the state of the vocal cords. Let's get some... Got no sound here on the music. 1 second. I just feel a little lonely without the background music. Where's Caruso? Yeah, there he is. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Why do you give several notes to indicate... Oh, he's going to explain. Why do you give several notes to indicate the limits of the registers? Answer: because the limits are not invariable and depend on the state of the vocal cords. So that's interesting. Very interesting. Question: can a teacher change at will the pitch of a voice and turn a contralto or mezzo-soprano into a soprano, or raise the pitch of a baritone to that of a tenor? Answer: the experiment has been tried, and when the subject has been young and vigorous, a short success has seemed to justify the attempt. But if not stopped in time, the final result has been the inevitable ruin of the voice. Yeah, that's why we have no famous baritenors today. Not a single one. No one alive who can sing baritone and also who can sing tenor and who has survived it. I can't think of a single example of professional tenors who are known for that today. But anyway. Okay, so I think we can stop here today. I'll check to see if there's any questions. And we'll start episode 4 here. And next time we'll be talking about timbre. We'll be talking about timbre. So let's see if there's any questions anyone has. Let's see. Yep. I think we get a couple questions. So let me bring up my chat. Yes, Joey Pye, Michael Spires. He's like really known for that. So I don't know. Where did I find he was the teacher of Dupre? That's always been like, I've never actually looked it up. It was like the legend that was told. Yeah. I think when I was in school, they taught us that Manuel Garcia invented the what's it called? Laryngoscope. And then the other thing was that he trained Dupre, that he invented the high C. And then also you learned that he ruined voices. That was the other thing. My first thing that I ever heard about Manuel Garcia was that he was a voice wrecker. And wait, I can move this up. Yeah. I just wanted to have that nice little frame in the back. I know, just above the chat, you can see there. You know, I actually put some effort into having the book there on the bookshelf. So I need you to look at it. Yeah, so Joey Pye's question: how many registers do you think the voice has? Oh, you know, I could have done this. Was just put it here. How many registers do I think the voice has? Huh. I don't know, Joey. I haven't thought about that. I think there's different. I guess I don't really think of it that way. I like the way the complete vocal technique thinks about this, where you have different modes, different vocal modes, and then those modes have pitch limits sometimes. And those pitch limits can be like generally different for females and males, for instance. So there are guidelines for how high you can take a metallic sound is higher for females than it is for males in general. But then there's some like exceptional males who can take it higher. So yeah. Yeah, that record effect from the New Yorker is related, Joey Pie. But before I do that, I'll finish the question about the registers. So I think what we have is different possible transition events depending on changes that might occur when you're crossing, and I would call it like certain pitches more than it is having to do with a particular person's anatomy. Although someone's particular anatomy could help them to like extend, for instance, how high they can sing with metal, or how long they can prevent the vocal folds from stretching out or something like that. All those individual differences might lead a person to be able to handle quote unquote registers, so going from one pitch to another without having the same instability as someone else who's using either a different vocal mode, so like a different pattern of vibration in the vocal folds, or maybe a different mechanism. So how much vocal fold is involved in the whole thing? If it's a wave with the whole mucosa involved, or if it's just the edges of it, etc., etc. So with those different, let's call them vocal coordinations that people use, as you're changing pitches, you might have some kind of instability event, if you will. And you can call that, and if that event has to do with, or eventually gets associated with changing from one vocal coordination to another, then you want to call it a register. So I don't know if it really is a register. I know that people train to stabilize the voice using different strategies, and that, for instance, I don't sing into a straw in order to stabilize the transition from what some people call the tenor chest register, or middle register. So if I'm on like a D flat and I want to go to F or G, I'm not singing into a straw to prepare for that, because I'm not trying to accomplish what the straw encourages me to do. So the straw encourages me to do what Garcia was talking about in the transition from chest to medium, chest to falsetto. What I'm trying to do is stay in that, what he calls chest, where my airflow is really low, the sound is really loud, and in my more modern terms, the sound is metallic. And I would say the sound is metallic, and then and also as dense as possible. I try to keep things pretty dense. And that keeps things stable, but then there's a pitch limit. I can't take that above, on the best day, like C#5. So you could say that there's registers, I guess. You could also say, excuse me. I could also divide up my voice in a different way. I could say, when I'm below about F4, I don't worry about tuning my timbre. When I'm above F4, I worry about tuning my timbre. And specifically, I'm trying to tune the second formant to the third harmonic. That's the goal. And as a tenor, that's the tricky transition for me. So if I wanted to think of two areas, I could do that. But then I could also, I don't know, split it up further. I could notice, oh, there can be instability around B and C in the middle. So that's B3 and C4 in the scientific notation. And then you can also hear this, some kind of change that goes on there. And then if that's relevant to you, then I guess divide it up into 3. I basically have something like Garcia. I have low, medium, and high. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I'm not sure that it's scientifically defined like that. It has a lot to do with my specific goals. I'm singing classical music, and it's like not less defining registers. It's more about defining strategy, I guess. So, yes, okay. Now, Joey, the article I was referring to, there is an article about it that went in the New Yorker, but that there was also like a whole book about this. I remember getting the book out to do a research paper for school, but that research paper is now lost. It had the citation in it, but it's on this old laptop that died. So, but there's like a whole book, I think, and it talks about, I think that New Yorker article talked about some similar things. So, don't you think at some point it can get overcomplicated for the singer? Yeah, I mean, I think information is like something that you're consuming. So if you overconsume, you're gonna get too full. So you want to keep an eye on that, and then also the reason Garcia points out that you would want to know this stuff is because you're the one making the exercises. If you've got that outsourced and it's working, then fine. You let someone else make the exercises for you. I think that today there's maybe more of a need for people to get actually the fundamental information and to put things together for themselves. Or if there's not need, then there's definitely demand. So for when I want to learn how to do something, I usually come on YouTube and I look up a tutorial on how to do it. And when I'm working on my animation and acoustics, visualizing acoustic project and stuff like that, and I want to learn some math because I need some math to try to make the thing turn the right color in the right spot, I look on YouTube for tutorials on math. And when you're teaching yourself that way, the fancy word for it is that you're an autodidact. And as an autodidact, knowing this kind of overcomplicated information is it's important, but then it's also important to organize it. It has to. So the feeling of overcomplicated, I think, is when you have a lot of information and it's not organized. It doesn't even actually have to be that much information to feel overcomplicated when it's not organized. I think the way you organize the information is by combining it with experience. So you take a concept and then you work with it. And you don't necessarily like try to translate the concept. So don't try to read Garcia and then fit that and then like do things that Garcia is telling you. Find ways to get that experience and then read Garcia and try to explain your experiences a little bit better, I think is what to do. But I don't think you can't think your way into good singing, I don't think. That's not how it happened for me. I used some knowledge. Like, I used this book a lot, Hints on Singing, to try to come back, if you will, to singing after quitting for a long time. And it was really helpful, and information was really helpful. But I think equally helpful for me was like lifting weights. I did some weightlifting, and it taught me a lot about movement. It taught me a lot about proprioception, and then it just actually made me stronger and more fit. And then from just being stronger and more fit, then when I was practicing, it was changing. But then, because I was thinking of that as part of the experience that I'm using to organize my information and my knowledge, it wasn't just a wild journey, you know, that and then that helped me not feel that things are overcomplicated. The other solution to when you are overthinking, for instance, that I like to say, because you know, a lot of people talk about like overthinking, like it's the worst thing in the world, like it's, I don't know, like it's definitely bad, and that you definitely have to stop overthinking. But I've noticed that telling people to not overthink is often like a guaranteed way to encourage them to overthink. And I've also noticed that like the 100% best way I've ever found to stop overthinking is to just overthink harder. Just don't resist the overthinking. Don't resist, you know, okay, it's overcomplicated. I feel like it's too much information. Get more information. Just keep getting more information. And if you're overthinking, things are feeling overcomplicated, keep going. Just keep. Maybe you're just thinking. And maybe you're not done. And when things aren't done and it's not cooked yet, the cake isn't ready. It's not supposed to seem like it's ready. And maybe you don't actually need to do anything except keep going. Keep the oven on. So that's cool. Okay, we should try to get that article. The record effect. And then there's an associated book. There has to be. I'm pretty sure I took that book out. Maybe it was a different book. Maybe I'm just misremembering. Okay, so big rooms. Yeah. What do you want to know about big rooms, Tiber? I mean, I do think they're really, really important. and the transition from even a rehearsal stage to the actual theater, depending on how sensitive you are, can be pretty brutal. And then nobody has any advice for you. So that can be a bit tricky. I think the biggest difference in big rooms is not even the sound, although the sound can throw you off. The thing about big rooms is they look different, and your brain knows how far things are and everything. But more importantly, it's using visual cues to help establish your balance and your coordination. And when you change your environment, if what you're doing depends on balance and coordination, and you're sensitive to those changes, you might have trouble balancing and coordinating, or you might be referring to the wrong place in the room unconsciously, but just your brain is referring to the wrong place in the room and saying, this is the horizon, this is up, this is down, basically. And you also derive that this is up, this is down, this is leaning forward, this is leaning back, and you wind up in positions you're not intending to be in with your body, with your whole body. And I think it has to do with, yes, the middle ear is a balance organ and everything for sensing gravity, but you also have this whole mechanism for keeping yourself upright that is more working with the eyes, the writing mechanism. And I think there's some rather simple things that you can do by just being conscious about it. And just by going into big rooms to sing, yeah, that helps. When I was how did I use the big rooms? When I was in school, I used to, I stayed in the summer when everyone left for the summer. And I somehow had gotten a key to the classrooms using kind of dirty tricks. But at first wasn't my idea, the dirty trick. So unintentionally at first, but then later I was guilty. I stole a key to all the classrooms at the music school at the University of British Columbia. And Nancy Hermiston, who was the head of the opera department, pretended not to know that I had stolen a key. Because I was sneaking into these classrooms, especially, to sing. And two important things about those rooms is they were like big, and they were too live. They were like, people would say you shouldn't sing in live rooms like this, but because the rooms had way too much reverb. But that way too much reverb, as not good as it is to make it a crutch, really lets you, for one, hear yourself, and then also it's like a boost as far as your confidence. And also nobody was around in the summer, and so I was able to go into those big rooms and just sing, do whatever, whatever I wanted, sing loud, and sing all the arias that normally would be forbidden to someone the age that I was. Yeah. So that was how I used those classrooms. And then big rooms. I don't know. I always try to find if I can get into the rehearsal stage to warm up or to work on music, etc., etc., I always try to get into big rooms. Not necessarily resonant rooms anymore. I'm more after the walls being far away so that I can have a much longer sight line. Okay, so I guess that's it for today. Thanks for coming, guys, and this has been Mr. Opera live stream. Oh, one more question. Okay, Joey Pie, this is gonna be okay. I'm gonna answer the last question, and I'm gonna be cheeky because it's the last. So the question is, do you use more hearing or feeling when you sing? And the answer is yes.
Poiché va preso